Hi, Danville. Alan Shields here, Chief of Police for the town, and we're 10-8 and in service to all of you, which means we're here to safeguard the lives, rights, and property of everyone we serve, and we do that in an effort to make people's lives better. We've had quite a bit more crime last week, but our traffic accidents are down, so we'll go over that later in the show, and we'll continue with our series on how to avoid being a victim and what to do if you are a victim of a crime. We do have some ways to connect, so I've got some announcements right off the bat. If you would like to participate and join in on making Danville a safer community, we've got a local roadway safety plan underway. This is the time for public input. You can drop a pin or you can define an area and tell us exactly what you feel the problem is and maybe even recommend a solution for us. And we can get going on that. But first off, I have to recognize I'm looking over the chat and I see one of our longtime viewers here, Laurel, saying hello from Vale and Beaver Creek. Every time you check in, I'm a little bit more jealous, and I'm always happy to be in Danville, but you always make me quite a bit jealous, so I hope you're enjoying your time there. We do have another way that you can come join with us, and this is a little different. Normally we do coffee with the cops, but this time it's going to be Bobo with the badges. So if you want to come down and enjoy some tea with us, this is going to be on a Saturday, so take special note. Usually we do these during the week, but this is going to be on a Saturday, July 23rd. And we're going to do it between 2 and 3. And we think this is a good time for us. We'll actually be out east too. So we're going to be on Camino Tassajara at Happy Lemon Tea. That's 3450 Camino Tassajara. So we try to make it out east once a month. I think we've missed a couple of months. We've mostly been in our downtown area. So if you live out east, or if you haven't been able to join us during the week, this is a good opportunity for both the weekend and to catch up with us on our east side there. All right. And we've got the big event of the year coming up. This is going to be our National Night Out. This is going to be on August 2nd. If you would like us to participate with you and your team and your community, go ahead and send an email to Lindsay Ortiz. She's our community outreach coordinator, our crime prevention coordinator. She wears about 3 hats, but that's what she does. What she'll do is she'll put you on the list so that we will come out to your area. And we usually come out with police officers. We come out with elected officials. So if you want to give either of us an earful on what we can be doing better, great opportunity. But the reality is this is an event that's designed to connect the community, connect all of you with one another. And then we just participate as good community members along with all of you. So it's a good chance if you'd like to coordinate that. I'll give you the one hint on to make it how this can be successful. Throw some food out on the table, make it a potluck, have people bring hot dogs, burgers, pasta, whatever it is that your community would like. And you'll be sure to get a lot of people out there. All right. So we're going to move on to our crime blotter. So we're going to I want to make sure I got all the announcements out of the way. Yeah. So we're on to the crime blotter. This is June 27th through July 3rd. As always, you can look it up on communitycrimemap.com. And you can set alerts for your neighborhood. You can see what crime has been happening there. And you can also get the sexual offender information on there as well, at least those that are reportable. So June 27th to July 3rd. I had a tough time squeezing this on one slide here. So let's run through this and I'll go into detail on one of them. In general, we had 1 robbery. We had 1 aggravated assault. Remember, that's above a simple assault. That is beyond a simple push and a shove. And then we had 4 thefts, and then we had 1 vehicle theft. Originally, we thought we had 5 thefts, but one of them was reclassified as a fraud, a little bit of a different crime there. And then we had 1 hit and run and no reported injury or property collisions. June 27th, we had an ATM that was stolen from in front of a business on East Prospect. On the 28th, there was a theft of a catalytic converter, and this occurred sometime a couple of weeks prior on North Forest Hill Place. On the 30th, June 30th, we had a theft of a pride flag. That is at least the second or the third one that we've had that at least has been reported to us. On July 1st, we had a shoplift at Lunardi's. On July 2nd, we had a stolen car from Boyd Court, and this is one of the reasons we were a little bit late getting started here, is it looks like we've recovered that vehicle. And just a little bit more of an update on that. Because we're sheriff's office, we cover the entire county. And so it's very easy for us to coordinate and, get resources together. So our officers are working with our deputy sheriff partners and we were able to recover that vehicle through a lot of work actually over the past week, reaching out to folks. But our officers head there now. He's got his little DNA kit in hand, and he's going to process the car, and we're going to be able to get it back to the owner. So we're glad that we were able to solve that one and recover it so quick. And a big kudos to our county partners out there. On the July 3rd, this is one of our two violent crimes. July 3rd, we had a fight between two restaurant employees on the 100 block of Town and Country. And that is, again, we're used to seeing green icons on our map here. And what I did was I circled the two violent crimes. The blue is the robbery. The red is the battery. And that's the violent crimes. So the fight between two restaurant employees on the 100 block of Town and Country. And then on the 3rd was the armed robbery in the Trader Joe's parking lot. And I'm going to cover that with a little bit more detail. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you what has already been released. There is no more information to release beyond that, but I do want to cover that, and I'll cover that after I cover the traffic. So let's look at traffic. So throughout the week, we had one reported hit and run. That was on June 29th, and that was on Thornhill Road. Now, that doesn't mean that was all of the collisions through the week. I just want to caution that this is the reported collisions. So these are the ones where officers actually went out and took a report. If there's a fender bender between you and your neighbor and you exchange information, there really isn't a reason for an officer to write a report. If there's a dispute as to the cause of the collision, if there is an injury, the officers will then take the report and document it. So we don't document all of the collisions, but in this case, we only had the one, and that was the hit and run. All right, so on to the robbery at Trader Joe's. So in the Trader Joe's parking lot on July 1st at 4:36 p.m., officers responded to a victim that stated he was held up at gunpoint. We issued a Nixle alert to avoid the area, and Danville PD and Contra Costa County Sheriffs, along with Sheriff's Star, which is our helicopter, searched for the suspects. Ultimately, Sheriff's detectives located the suspects in Antioch, and with the assistance of Antioch PD and the Star helicopter, the Sheriff's helicopter, all suspects were arrested. There were 3 suspects total. One was an 18-year-old, 2 were juveniles, and as of today, all 3 have been charged by the DA's office with assault with a deadly weapon and robbery. We have had a lot of questions as to connection with other crimes and the status of our robbery from the week prior, and we don't have any information on that to release at this time, other than to say that we are continuing to investigate that robbery that took place on Hartford. That's being aggressively investigated. So we are still investigating that case. All right. So we're going to move on. I do have one quick advisory. Let me check and see if there's anything in the chat before we go to that. So Lou Plummer says, "Hello all, glad to have our 4th parade back." I think that was a very well attended parade. And how about this? Anybody listening, let us know. We as the police department, we have a great deal of concern. I'll be honest with you. That's from an anxiety standpoint, that's one where we put a lot of effort in and we put a lot of attention to, and it does generate a lot of concern for us because I think that you all put a great deal of faith in us to properly plan an event and make sure that it runs smoothly, and then make sure we have resources in place to mitigate any hazards should they come up. And we do a great deal of planning, and we put a lot of resources. And frankly, again, this doesn't, happen if we don't have 2 things. If we don't have the volunteer support that we have, and that we don't have our support from the sheriff's office, because, we've got 30 total sworn positions here. And on that day, we bumped that up to 50 or 60 sworn total positions. And we're able to do it with relative ease because we can rely on the support from being part of this big organization that we belong to. We also have a lot of other partners that come and help out between Alameda County, San Ramon Police Department actually came up and supported as well. So it really is a huge community event. But it's not lost on me that if it's not for very considerate and kind people that come to the parade, that it wouldn't be successful. And so I know there's sticking points between cars not being able to go certain places and people wanting to cross the route at certain spots. And I get it that it sometimes can be frustrating and rough, but everything I saw out there on the 4th was kindness from all of those in attendance. And it really did make, as Lou would say, a good parade. We were all glad to see it back. So here's the thing. In the comments, if you have a suggestion for the 4th parade, let us know. Throw it in the comments. If there was something that you liked in the 4th parade, let us know that too. This is a good chance to get that going. All right. I do want to cover this. I've been covering it a lot, but I think it deserves repeating, and it has to do with bicycles and the Iron Horse Trail. Let's look at this. And this is courtesy of Andy Dillard. Andy Dillard, our transportation manager, has been doing really, really big strides in trying to increase the bicycle safety. So if you look at this, this is an Iron Horse Trail crossing. So this is from the perspective of a cyclist, a walker, someone with, walking the kids with a stroller, but a pedestrian type scenario where they're crossing the road and they've got this blinky, flashy stop sign. And you've got on the flip side for the drivers, you can see in the picture on the left, we've got this flashing light display that says, hey, this is a pedestrian cross. And then they even added for nighttime, that picture on the left, lights so that as someone is walking, riding across the crosswalk, you'll better be able to see them. And so these are huge, huge strides in bike safety. But the problem is we still have an obligation as cyclists, as walkers, as drivers to do what we're obligated to do at this intersection. We've covered it before, but the two things. One, as a cyclist, as a jogger, as a walker, you are not to just go out into that roadway, even though it's a crosswalk. You're not to just go out in the roadway when traffic is coming. You are supposed to wait, make sure that they see you, then proceed when safe. Once you're in the crosswalk, then the obligation shifts and goes to the drivers. And so the drivers must yield to a pedestrian in the crosswalk. But the obligation on us as walkers, as I ride my bike, I cross through these intersections, is for us to slow down, ensure that it's safe, and not just go out. And I actually have a pretty cool video, and I wanted to share it with you real quick. But here's a video of what it would look like from a rider or walker's perspective on crossing one of these intersections. So let's check this out. So as you come up to the intersection, you're going to slow. Look at that. There's like 2 stop signs there. One of them's flashing at me to tell me to stop. Look. You look right. You see that the car is coming to a stop and stopping. Then you may proceed when it's safe to do so. And at this point, the drivers would have the obligation to stop and not proceed into the crosswalk where the rider or the jogger or the walker is already at. So that is what it should look like when we cross. What we shouldn't see is runners, and we shouldn't see cyclists, and we shouldn't see people. And this is a good one. And here, let me get this. What we shouldn't see is we shouldn't see someone with their head in their phone at any crosswalk in town, just simply going out into the road under the perception that they have the right of way, and everyone will, 1, see them, and 2, stop for them. So please make sure, as pedestrians, as cyclists, make sure that we're paying attention on that one. And I've got some comments on the 4th of July parade, and this is from Judy. She says, thank you to Kiwanis members and TPD for the great parade. Love those clampers. Judy, I'll say the Kiwanis does an excellent job every year managing a parade like this and ensuring that the floats get out, ensuring that the planning is all done. They put a considerable amount of effort, and we enjoy the partnership that we share with Kiwanis in putting this on. So they did very, very well. So Kendra says the crossing at Fostoria Way needs help. It's very unsafe. Okay, so you're talking Iron Horse Trail, Fostoria Way, so that's kind of east of the Costco. So I know which one you're talking about. I'll be honest with you, Kendra, I think all of them need something. And so we're working with and suggesting to our transportation manager exactly that. But here's what I'll say. If you could do me one favor and jump on our local roadway safety plan, and there's a link down in the description. All you have to do is click it, then go right over that Fostoria Way intersection and, put a box, drop a pin, but put in what you feel makes it unsafe and maybe even what you feel might make it safer. And so we have an element of humility that allows us to take in a lot of feedback from people. And this is what we're looking for with that local roadway safety plan. All right. Let me see if there's anything else in the chat before we move on to our next topic. And this is going to be on how to avoid being a victim. So let's move on to how to avoid being a victim. And this is, you've heard me talk about it before, but we do active threat training. I think I covered it 2 weeks ago. And you can also find it in our quarterly update that we gave to our town council. But we do training for staff and volunteers on what happens if there is an active threat. So if there's something that's unfolding that's very hazardous or dangerous, what should you do? And we believe and we recommend what both the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI recommend, which is the Run, Hide, Fight program. And that's actually what we provide training to. And it is a program that is pretty universal and very easy to remember. And it's basically a plan of action. And it fits right in with the advice that we give should you be in a situation where you might be a victim. We want people to avoid it as much as they can. We want people to ensure that they're not victimized. We don't want people seeking out those opportunities for confrontation. In fact, even as law enforcement officers, we try very hard to think several steps ahead on how we can avoid violent encounters, and we would ask that everyone do the same. And we realize that there is a progression of this, and as people living in town or as people that may be victimized, that we're not necessarily in control of all of these situations. So we do recognize that. And that's why we like the Run, Hide, Fight program. Let me move here. So here's what we'll recommend is in keeping with the Run, Hide, Fight model is run if you can, hide if you get the opportunity, and use common sense as you're doing this and know your capabilities. But if you get confronted, try to talk your way out of it. Stall for time. If you can be verbally assertive, that may be helpful. If you have the opportunity to distract or the assailant's attention gets diverted and you get an opportunity to flee, you can always switch right back to the run portion and flee. And what we'd recommend is if you are running, run towards open businesses, groups of people. You can also scream loudly. That will, one, draw attention to yourself for help, but also maybe encourage people to kind of leave that area and avoid being victims as well. And if the attacker does threaten or threatens to attack or attacks you, this is where you have to have a decision on what your course of action is, but it is a decision that you have to make. There's no hard and fast rules. There is no one-stop shop best way to defend yourself, and you really have to consider your physical capabilities, your location, and your perceived chances of success. And although listed last, this is not the last thing you should do. You should notify the police, and you should do this at your first opportunity and ask witnesses to stay if the event has concluded and it's safe to do so. On the notification, as an example, as a law enforcement officer, unless it requires me to immediate react, if I have any time, my first thing that I'm going to reach for is my radio, and I'm going to make sure that I've got help coming, because this is the thing that's probably going to support me the most. And so I'm going to make sure that I get that help request out to law enforcement, my partners, and they're coming towards me. So that's how we would suggest implementing the Run, Hide, Fight model if you feel that you're about to be a victim of a crime. We want to make sure that you avoid the conflict as best you can, because we realize that there is inherent risk in any conflict, right? And so we really do encourage that. All right, so Celeste says, thank you for repainting the crosswalks at Lawrence and Camino Task by Diablo Vista Middle School. I appreciate that. I'll pass that kudos on. We actually have, I didn't, as a police officer, I had no idea what a pavement condition index was. I just knew, as someone that rode bikes all over town and all over the county, and several counties actually, that the pavement was really nice here in town. But our engineering team will tell you that we have an excellent PCI, and we've maintained that throughout the years. And it includes things like ensuring that the roadways are safe and they've got a good, that the conditions of them are good. So I will certainly pass that one on. All right, so we did have a user question, and I promised them that I would actually have a segment to it. So that has morphed into our final thought for today. And this one goes out to Eric Parker. Eric Parker said, were charges put against neighbor? Curious how they fired without fear for their own lives, and what that sparked was a conversation about self-defense. Is there a self-defense? Are you allowed to defend yourself or others? And it's very hard, and that's a question that comes up all the time. And we get that when we do speaking in front of groups. And what happens is, eventually what people want to do is they want to ask scenario-specific questions. if someone comes into my home, if someone does this, if this happens, can I do X, Y, and Z? And it's really a hard way to do this. So what I decided to do was I'm going to just explain what it is that maybe an officer does when they get onto the scene of, like, say, a simple battery. Now, Eric's question was very specific to an investigation that we have, and I cannot release anything with regard to that because we don't try these cases in the public sphere, and I don't want to hinder that investigation at all. It would not be appropriate for the victims involved. So anything I'm saying here is not specific to that case, but I'm just speaking in generalities. So let's take a look. One of the things, if you're not aware, well, a couple of things. When officers are out investigating crimes, one of the resources we have is called the penal code, and that's where you've got crime types. So like when we say a burglary occurred, there's a penal code section 459 that actually defines what a burglary is. So if we were going to take some sort of action like arrest someone, I would need to know what the elements of that crime are. We also have a vehicle code. Vehicle code helps us determine, it defines what speeding is. It defines what running a stop sign is, those sort of things. Well, there's also another resource that officers will use, and that is, well, there's a couple, but there's a legal source book which helps to kind of merge the penal and vehicle codes with case law. And what it does is it helps direct us and further put a point on what the elements of certain crimes are. And then there's another resource that we have that many cops and investigators will use, and it's called we call it CalCrim, but it's the California Jury Instructions. Sorry about that. And so that's the California Jury Instructions. And here's an example from the jury instructions on what you may find in there. And so in this case, I pulled two examples. One is a simple battery. So that's like a pushing and a shoving. And then the right to self-defense and defense of another. And what we'll do is we'll just take a look at them real quick as they're written. And so what you'll do, and these are all publicly available. In fact, there's a link in the description. So if you'd like to look this up, you can read all of these on your own. And for me, it's a good resource, because if you can imagine, if you get called to jury duty and you go to court and there's a battery between two people, right, a pushing shoving match, the judge is going to read you these instructions. And so they're written in a way that is very easy to understand, so that you as a juror would be able to listen to the facts of a case and make a decision based on that. So let's take a look and see. Let's look at what simple battery is first. So if you can read this, it says the defendant is charged with battery in violation of Penal Code Section 242. To prove that the defendant is guilty of this crime, the people must prove, and the people would be like the district attorney in this case, they must prove that, one, the defendant willfully and unlawfully touched, and then you would insert the person's name there, in a harmful or offensive manner, and the defendant did not act in self-defense in defense of someone else and this one might be a hot topic, or while reasonably disciplining a child. So that is the definition of the crime that would be read to a juror to balance that out. And then the second part is if there is an assertion of self-defense, then they would read this section. And that is the section on self-defense. And it says that self-defense is a defense to, and then you would list whatever the crime is. So in this case, battery. Self-defense is a defense to battery. The defendant is not guilty of that or those crimes if he or she has used force against the other person in lawful defense of another. The defendant acted in lawful self-defense or defense of another if the defendant reasonably believed that he, she, or someone else, or you can list them by name, was in imminent danger of suffering bodily injury, or is in imminent danger of being touched unlawfully. 2, the defendant reasonably believed that the immediate use of force was necessary to defend against the danger. And 3, the defendant used no more force than was reasonably necessary to defend against the danger. Okay, so that is what, from a simple battery standpoint, that's what the crime looks like, and that's what the self-defense part looks like. So you can see from our perspective, that's why our advice is to try to avoid the conflict to begin with, right? We often talk about the Pelian principles. They play at the beginning of every one of these podcasts. And part of it is the people are the police and the police are the people. And what that means is that we all share that same obligation to public safety. But what we ask you to do is work at being good witnesses. Let us go and chase and do those things, and let us use our tactics and let us use our tools to enforce the law. And so you can see this is where self-defense lies. And I hope that I answered Eric's question. I know that I can't and won't pass judgment on a case that's being investigated. That's improper. But I at least wanted to answer the question as to self-defense. And so I hope we covered that. Okay, Eric. So Eric is a comedian, and this will be good. And I hope he comes to one of these Coffee with the Cops, because this would be pretty funny. So Eric says, can spank your kids, just not the stranger at Starbucks taking 15 minutes to order. So pretty funny. So we know Eric has a good sense of humor, so we appreciate that, Eric. And I'm looking in the comments here. We've got Lou Plummer. Shout out to Ruben Borg, fencing for all the music. 8 or 9 bands, and their fleet of Teslas. Yeah, so I think, on to the National Night Out. So I said food brings people in, music brings them in too. So good point. It did make it a good event. So great time on the 4th. I'm going to check and see if there's any other comments here. I don't see them, but I do want to cover one more thing real quick, and that's our crime triangle. We're gonna just keep going over this crime triangle to make sure that we've got it. In order for crime to occur, 3 things must be present. We try to get at least 1, if not 2, of the legs of this 3-legged stool and wipe them out. And that is a motivated offender, a location where there's a lack of suitable site management, and then there has to be a victim or a target. So as you can imagine, trying to manage the offender, really difficult, very unpredictable. But we know where locations take place where crime occurs, right? In our shopping centers. And that's where typically if a car's going to be broken into, it's going to be there. So if you go downtown, you can see it. Our shopping centers and the people that own them and run them do a very good job. They keep the bushes trimmed real low. They keep the trees trimmed high. There's usually good lighting in there. And so there's good site visibility. So if a crime does occur, someone may have a chance to see it. And then frankly, all of you do a really good job. It may seem like we have a lot of crime in town, but we don't. And frankly, that's a lot less of the police is doing, and that's a lot more of you're doing. We're not seeing purses in plain sight all the time. We're not seeing wallets in plain sight. We're not seeing cell phones left up. So you do an excellent job about not being a victim. And so always be thinking about what you can do to avoid being a victim. And then also, if there's an area where you have control over your home, your business, what can you do to make that as undesirable as possible for people wishing to commit crime? All right. Thanks. Okay, so let me cover. So we still have some outreach here. So if you want to come meet with us in person, Bobo with the badges. This is kind of a rebrand for the day of our Coffee with a Cop program. Saturday, July 23rd, and that will be from 2 to 3. So this is a weekend, and it's out east. It's at 3450 Camino Tassajara, and we're going to be out at the Happy Lemon Tea. Happy Lemon Tea. So come join us there. Also, National Night Out, August 2nd. If you want to coordinate with your community and then register with us so that we will come out, go ahead and do that. You can send an email to Lindsay Ortiz. Her email is in the description below. And I tell you what, she works really, really hard on this. Usually we get, I think last year we had at least a dozen, maybe 11. And that was kind of an off year. Usually we're up around 15 to 19 places. We will come out to those. We divide and conquer. So you'll usually get an elected official, you'll get some cops, and we even give this list to our fire partners, and they bring the big red trucks and all the cool firemen out there. And so it is a good time. And if you have good food, and like Lou says, throw some music out there, and it will be a lot of fun. So that is all I have for tonight. I appreciate, 1, you allowing me to be 15 minutes late tonight, and 2, you sticking with me. If you can do me a favor, throw a like. Make sure you're subscribed to our channels, and maybe even forward this to someone else so that they can get this information and we can keep this show going. We're 10-10, but we're always 10-8, and in service to all of you. Have a good night.